Howdy doody, buckaroonies. The other week, I was at a party at my friend Nine's house, but 2, 4, 6, and 8 didn't show up, and it was just sort of odd. So I walked over to ask Nine how they were feeling, and they looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I don't know, man. I just can't even right now." But it looks like Nine got their groove back, because today, we're going to be taking a look at everything new in the Arturia V Collection 9.
Welcome to the Arturia V Collection 9.
For those of you not already familiar with the V Collection, here's a super brief recap. As of version 9, V Collection comes with 32 different instruments and somewhere north of 14,000 presets, and it covers pretty much the entire sonic bandwidth of what you need in the world of synthesizers, with everything from big analog poly stuff to screamy mono-y things to the wacky wild world of FM to the weird digital sampler workstations of yore and a whole lot of ground in between. V Collection 9 brings 4 brand new instruments and 4 updated instruments and a whole bunch of presets and tweaks and enhancements so everything sounds better and looks better doing it. If you haven't seen my other videos where I exhaustively explored everything else inside of V Collection, you can check those out with the links down in the description. With that, let's check out what's new. First up, we have the SQ80 V. If dreamy pads and crisp but warm sounds are your thing, then this is almost the ideal blend of analog and digital. This is one of a few instruments from the V Collection that I personally keep installed all the time. I really love the sound of this, and I've always had sort of a thing for the ensonic sound. The added effects and features make this a ton of fun to explore, and it's probably one of my favorites from the V Collection outside of my good pal, the DX7. So, long and short of it, if you love video gamey, digitally 80s and 90s retro flair, then this is the one for you. The MS-20 doesn't really need any introduction because your hipster friend probably has one sitting next to their Chemex system, which is neatly nestled between their cassette collection and reclaimed barnwood Etsy Polaroid frames. The MS-20 is a semi-modular noise-making machine, and it really shines when you lean into the sort of quirky sound it has with the screaming filter and the overall sort of rough and ready vibe. The filter modeling on the MS-20 is phenomenal sounding, and Arturia also added in a polyphony feature allowing for up to 6 voices of polyphony. When you use this feature though, there is a warning that notes that it's quite CPU intensive, and in my testing this is definitely a power-hungry plugin, and I'm running it on a pretty beefy computer system, so it might be a good idea to install the demo and test this one out to see if your computer can handle it if polyphony is your thing. Finally, we have augmented strings and augmented voices. I'm lumping these two together because I'm not totally sure why they're two separate instruments, and everything between them is largely the same. Both of these are brand new original instruments from Arturia, and they're not an emulation of anything, which I found a bit odd considering that was kind of the V Collection's thing, but I'll take it. In short, these are synthesizers made up of 2 sample engines and 2 synth engines that you can set up in any way you want on an A and B side, and you can morph between them. It's a shame there isn't any kind of user sample import, and I would have loved to see this as a new original synth similar to something like Pigments with this sort of hybrid workflow in mind. I'm thinking I may do a separate video on these at some point in the future because there are quite a few interesting features and ideas below the surface, but I think that's a chat we'll save for another time. V Collection 9 also has a few rebuilt instruments which bring better sound engines and new UIs to some of the existing synths from previous editions. So first up, we have the CS80. Sonically, this feels significantly improved, and it feels a lot less plasticky in a direct comparison with its predecessor, and I really like the sound of the filter in this new version. The UI design is a lot cleaner, and it gains a much more usable advanced tab with some new modulations and effects, and I'm glad to see Arturia is starting to unify their products to have a similar workflow, making it a lot easier to master such an extensive collection of different instruments. I did find that this update was a bit CPU intensive, but it's really not the end of the world, and for the sake of the sound update, I don't really mind. The Prophet was probably the weakest thing in the other V collections, in my opinion, outside of the Moog modular, and I never really used this much at all personally. This update sounds a whole lot better, and much like the CS80 update and the Jupiter update in the previous version of V Collection, this feels like a complete sonic overhaul. This version is a lot more fun to play, and although it is a simple synth, that's sort of a testament to the magic of some of this old gear and what made it special, that despite the fact that it's maybe a bit more on the boring side in the world of synths, it just sounds really good. With this update, I think it's pretty cool that everyone can have a Prophet in front of them and play it and have some of the extended features of new effects and polyphony, and overall a pretty good update. The refreshed UI is nice, and it brings the same new features and effects, so thumbs up from me on this one. If glorious pads and leads and an ambient dream machine were on your wish list, then look no further than the cousin of the Prophet Vector. Vector synths are really cool and work by combining different sounds with an XY controller in a mixer, but the unique idea being that you can automate the movement of the mixer over time. This version definitely has a lot more character with this update, and it packs in a more notable, sort of gritty digital sound, especially when you compare it directly with the previous version. Further to that point, the Prophet and Prophet Vector synths have been separated into two completely different instruments, whereas in previous versions of V Collection, they were merged together and you would swap between them within a single instrument. Like the original Prophet, I didn't use this one very much in previous versions of V Collection, but this update might change my mind. This also packs in a refreshed UI because it was just completely redesigned, and I find this version a lot easier to use. I'm not totally sure why that is, but I think that's also sort of a testament to a good UI design. Finally, that brings us to Piano V3. This is a pretty solid update, like the Stage 73 update in the previous version, and it really brings this instrument to life in the V Collection, I think, but not necessarily in purely sonic terms, more in just flexibility. There are a lot more controls to dial in the piano model, which makes this update a lot more flexible and usable for a wider variety of piano applications in the mix, with everything from bright grands and poppy pianos to more intimate, felty, cinematic-y things, which is nice. The sound engine overall seems to be improved, but I can't exactly put my finger on why. It just sounds a bit more right, so I'm assuming the underlying engine was updated to a more recent version. I will say with this piano, I wish they maybe added the effects section from the other synths to this to really take it up a notch, but I have a hard time complaining because I think Piano V is just meant to be a piano, and that's exactly what it does, so not the end of the world, but maybe next time. Coming in at around $18 per synthesizer when you buy it at full price, and considering it's on sale pretty often, I think the V Collection continues to be one of the most impressive and comprehensive synth collections on the market, and I have a really hard time thinking of many downsides to it. It sounds great, it's a lot of fun to use, and it'll keep you busy for a really long time, and if you combine it with something like Arturia's own pigments and a solid MIDI controller like their own Keylab lineup, I think that's a pretty formidable music making setup for, in the grand scheme of things, not a whole lot of money. Arturia continues to be one of my favorite companies in the music space. This wasn't a paid video or endorsement or anything like that. I just really like Arturia and what they're doing because I feel like they're just doing so many things right. I have a bunch of their gear here in my studio. I've worked with them on a bunch of projects, and I always get really excited when they let me know they've got something new coming out, because I feel like you can tell how much love and thought they put into everything they're doing, both in the worlds of hardware and software. They're always iterating with new updates, they're always building on their own already pretty strong foundations, and they always seem to find some clever ways to innovate on existing things, and I really can't say the same for a lot of other companies. Personally, I think the V Collection is sort of a thing of beauty. It's great to see that Arturia made emulations of some of the most iconic gear ever and made it accessible to everybody while not being afraid to enhance it and work with it in ways that make it fun and useful in the context of a modern production. So with that, a big thank you to Arturia for hooking me up here with the V Collection 9 a couple weeks ahead of time so I could play around with it and share my thoughts and experiences with all of you. And with that, Arturia, talking to you now. Still waiting on the Ensoniq Physmo here, so let's get on that. With that, what do you think of the V Collection? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's great? Do you think it's garbage? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.